to the Carlson home at Christmas time. I am Elsa Carlson, and when I lived in Spring Grove, I was Elsa Hansen. My father, Rolf Hansen, was pastor at Trinity Lutheran Church for nearly 13 years, and my mother, Esther Hansen, was a great hostess and mother at the parsonage across the street where I lived with my siblings, Rolf, Christine, Karen, Peter, and Greta. The friendly small-town Scandinavian-inspired ambience of Spring Grove and its people have left us all with many memories. Here are a few pictures of my parents when they were grand marshals at the Sitna Mai parade and through later years into their retirement. Baking and decorating holiday cookies is why I'm here today, and it's a tradition shared by many families. My mother's recipe turned gingerbread into something that will long be traced back to her and our family. My father's first parish was a 4-point parish along the North Shore, and he began a tradition of having a Christmas Eve service at the Grand Marais Church. And my mother invited whoever was at the service to come over for coffee and cookies afterwards. Even through the late hour, they had a cozy time and enjoyed coffee, and that is where gingerbread cookies made their first appearance. She found the recipe in a Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, and a tradition was started. And for Christmas 1984, she gave us all a journal, which has recipes from my 2 grandmothers and her. She prefaced it like this: perhaps this little volume can be the beginning of a little collection of kitchen heritage recipes that have been family traditions and treasures. May these gifts to us be blessed. Her entries were titled Standby Number 1, which was homemade buns, and Standby Number 2, ginger cookies. And for this, she had a little writing about this also. I know a key to getting things done in a family with children and visitors is to do things in stages, being able to put some project on hold and then continuing. Both of these recipes lend themselves to such handling. They have served me well, and I think I could say really that they have been well served by me with satisfaction and pleasure. I have counted on these standby recipes. They have stood by me well. Much love, Mother. The ginger cookie can be adapted to many holidays and special events. My family has many cookie cutters in each household, and when my parents moved to St. Paul, to their last parish, somehow a food editor at the Minneapolis Star-Tribune got wind of Esther Hansen and this ginger cookie recipe. They asked if they could do a feature on the recipe and her, so that they set a time the day before Thanksgiving that year to come to the house, take photographs, and develop an article to be featured in the December 4th, 1984 Sunday paper. They arrived 2 hours late as a huge snowstorm developed, making city travel very slow. But getting ready for the article was quite the undertaking and slow process also. My mother baked many cookies, and my sisters and I helped decorate them all. When it was time for the pictures to be taken, she insisted that we all pose in the picture, and we adamantly refused. So she took my 2.5-year-old daughter to pose with her, and we all treasure this photo. And in 2004, the recipe and picture were reprinted, as the cookies were one of the most requested recipes they had featured over the years. Now we'll move into the kitchen and talk about the recipe. You should have access to this recipe through the Eula Fest site, but I have a few little tweaks that I do to the recipe. I like to 1.5 the recipe that you might have, so here I've got it if you want to take a look at that. But a molasses bottle that looks like this, and I use the mild flavor molasses. This is the perfect size for 1.5ing a recipe. Also for making the frosting that goes with this. It looks like it's really caloric, but I take a complete bag of confectioner's sugar, a stick of softened margarine, a teaspoon or so of vanilla flavoring, and one half cup of milk. And that mixes up into a good amount of frosting for these cookies. And growing up, my sisters and I would use metal plunger type decorating tubes for decorating cookies, and we like to use a lot of colors. And this was fine, but the cleanup itself afterwards was not fun for anyone. And so, when I was married, the same thing happened, and my husband began to voice his displeasure at somehow being on the end of doing the cleanup in the sink from all of those decorating tubes also. So I credit him for getting my mind to think about how can I make this less of a mess. So I've put a piece of paper inside a bread bag here, just so you can see what I'm trying to show a little easier. I take a quarter round of each end, and here's the tip of what's going to be a frosting squirter bag. And I put about 2 tablespoons of frosting in each one and secure this end tightly with a twist tie, and it'll turn out to look something like this. And when you get ready to decorate, maybe start with cutting a small hole, and if you need it to be bigger, you can cut a tiny bit more. But that's a really good cleanup hack. And as for your dough, when you are making the first ingredients, those first 4, the molasses, the sugar, the margarine, and so forth, and molasses go in a medium-sized saucepan, and that needs to maybe cool for a couple hours or so, and I usually do it overnight. And then I'll put the dough, which will be sort of sticky like, and I'll put it in a bag such as this, and you'll get 2 bags full. And before you start rolling things out, you can put a little bit of flour maybe on your surface, and then let it sit out to not be quite so cold while you're rolling. And then you can decide if you want your cookies to be thick or thin. I personally like a thicker cookie, and they bake at 375 for 8 to 10 minutes, depending on the size or thickness of the cookie. But 1 1/2ing the recipe, you can decide, well, I don't need this all, so I can put what I have left back in the freezer. It thaws very easily, as does these little frosting packets. And when you're doing the frosting, I would say 1 recipe of that makes about 24 of these little baggies, and it works perfectly for when you have little helpers, grandchildren or children, or whoever likes to help decorate. These also you want to be at room temperature, and each bag will easily decorate 4 to 5 cookies. And I started a progression here, and to start a cookie you might just think, well, I'm not going to be good at this. Well, every Hallmark movie that you watch has some feature with a gingerbread cookie, or they're talking about cocoa and cookies, and it doesn't matter, they'll eat the flubs, or they'll try and make what they think is a great cookie. Whatever, they'll taste great whether you've decorated them well or not. And I say try a simple, if you were doing a heart for instance, just take and do a simple outline. This is kind of a medium thick. If I wanted to be more intricate, I could do a skinnier hole. And then just, these kind of look maybe rose balling like. You just kind of start doing this, And then as you continue and you think, well, that looks pretty good and I'm happy with that, but learn to do a dot. And a dot can be something that you can just learn to squirt, and it adds a little extra design, and it'll kind of progress. So here we've got a little bit more happening to this, and you'll have fun getting used to doing that. This looks actually kind of good, tasty. And then decide, oh, well, why don't I try another little blob here or there? And you can kind of get yourself buoyed into thinking, I can do this. And you could keep going if you wanted to. Another one is a straight line. And then as you do this, when you get a bunch of your cookies that you're making, perhaps let the frosting set so it's not going to be crushed, and that's a simple snowflake. Then you can take saran wrap and wrap around each cookie, and it will keep and preserve them for, the weeks around Christmas time when you need to pull out a cookie, and there they are ready to go. When my parents moved to St. Paul, to their last parish, my mother would oftentimes have us help her make cookies for coffee hours between services. And we would chuckle a bit sometimes when we would notice people, ladies tucking a couple cookies into the napkin at the coffee hour table and tucking those into their purse so they could have a little treat later in the day. Or we would run into people throughout the years who would say on numerous occasions, oh, I still have the cookie from 10 years ago and it's in my freezer and it's still perfect. And we would all just kind of go, oh, just eat the cookie, just enjoy it and have a fun family activity doing it all. So we have many memories of things associated with this cookie. And we have many memories of very special spring Grovites. My parents were touched by the continued friendship and visits from many of you throughout their retirement years. And perhaps my mother had her standby homemade bun or standby ginger cookie ready for you when you visited them in their retirement years. She was a gracious hostess until the end. My family wishes you a very happy and blessed Christmas time. Go Yule and enjoy a cookie with me.
Thank you for joining us, and make sure to check our website for tomorrow's video on Norsk julesang, Norwegian Christmas songs. Of course, don't forget the upcoming virtual Juletrefest on December 23rd, and make sure to check out Giant's gift shop in person Monday through Saturday, 10 to 5, or online at giantsoftheearth.org for fabulous holiday gifts, including locally made creations. Also, did you know that we would like to see your Yule calendar creations? Please like us on Facebook and share your Yuletide stories and photos on our Facebook page. I'm Stina Myra, and I thank you for joining Giants of the Earth Heritage Society this afternoon. Ha det bra og god jul! Goodbye and Merry Christmas!